The following is an audiobook of my book, Mentally Tough Tennis, 7 Ways to Be Mentally Tough. The new edition of this book, 8 Ways to Be Mentally Tough, can be purchased on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or HalfPriceBooks.com. I hope you enjoyed this audiobook, and please consider purchasing the latest edition. Thank you. Mentally Tough Tennis, 7 Ways to Be Mentally Tough. Written by Adrian Gonzalez. Narrated by Adrian Gonzalez. Copyright 2019, Adrian Gonzalez, all rights reserved. Website, winningprocesstennis.com. Instagram at TopspinAdrian. Twitter at TopspinAdrian. This audiobook is dedicated to my wife, Merce. I love you. Contents. Introduction. Chapter 1. Commit to the winning process. Chapter 2. Don't bother controlling your emotions. Amplify them. Chapter 3. Respect the game of tennis. Chapter 4. Forgive. Chapter 5. Know the small picture versus the big picture. Chapter 6. Have a sense of urgency, not a sense of impatience. Chapter 7. Seek motivation outside of your own ego. About the author. References. Introduction. This is a book that I wish I could have read in my early days as a junior tennis player. It would have not only helped me win more tennis matches, but also helped me enjoy tennis more, regardless if I had won or lost a match. Hopefully, you will enjoy my perspective and use the material in this book to better your tennis game and other aspects of your life. Thank you, Coach Adrian. Chapter 1. Commit to the winning process. During my first season as boys' head tennis coach for St. Ignatius College Preparatory in San Francisco, I knew I was in for a rough start. Although I had been playing tennis for 30 years upon the time I took over as head coach, I lacked experience in actual coaching. I asked myself, how do I organize and discipline a group of young, talented, yet rowdy teenagers into a winning tennis team? Our preseason matches were lacking focus. I felt some of my players were not playing up to a high standard. It seemed like everyone was just fooling around. I suppose kids will be kids, but I needed to come up with something fast. That something was the winning process. It was a success. The winning process helped motivate my players consistently perform at peak levels. It helped significantly improve the team from a 6-11 record the previous year to an 11-4 winning record. The winning process automated teamwork, accountability, and high standard of play. The winning process was something that almost came out of my mind spontaneously, but its thinking originated from the time I took Buddhist and Eastern philosophy classes at San Francisco State University. I was always fascinated with how early Buddhists viewed the self as a process. So, to understand the winning process, we must first take a look at the two words individually, process and winning. Let's start with process. In Philosophy of the Buddha, author Christopher Gowans best explains my view of a process. A process is not a thing, entity, or being, but an event, activity, or becoming. As a movement, a process has an important temporal character. It involves a continuous passage of becoming from past to present to future. Gowans, 2007, page 71. When I say process, envision a whirlpool. A whirlpool is simply rotating mass of water. You can see it in an ocean or in your bathtub drain. From moment to moment, the water that makes up the whirlpool is always different. Yet, no matter what type of water is thrown into the whirlpool, nor how small or large it gets, it still can be identified as the same whirlpool despite being ever-changing. As with all processes, when the whirlpool stops rotating, it ceases to exist. If you want the process to exist, you must feed energy into it. You must rotate the water. A whirlpool is probably the best visual example of a process. But in actuality, everything in life can be understood as a process. the walls in your room, our bodies, the game of tennis. Everything that exists in time and reality can be interpreted as a process because everything is ever-changing. Winning. Author of The Inner Game of Tennis, W. Timothy Gallwey, wrote a profound statement on winning. He says, "Today I play every point to win. It's simple and it's good. I don't worry about winning or losing the match, but whether or not I am making the maximum effort during every point because I realize that is where the true value lies." Gallwey, 2008, page 122. When I say winning, I am not referring to the actual result of winning a tennis match, as Gallwey pointed out. Results are not something that we can truly control in any match. What we can control is our effort. The winning process, the persistent and ongoing awareness that the right thoughts, actions, and effort will lead to a successful and rewarding experience. Winning process examples: allowing yourself to be coached, staying humble, listening, learning new techniques, maximizing effort, wanting to work hard, encouraging and supporting your teammates, being resilient, cleaning up after practice or a match is finished, leading by example, being focused on the present. If you're not in the winning process, you'll find yourself in the distraction process. You will become easily distracted by external events and your own internal thoughts. When you are distracted, you become easy to beat by your opponent simply because your attention is on irrelevance. Distraction process examples: laziness, spacing out, being bored, feeling stupid or awkward, feeling that you're not good enough, being angry at yourself or your teammates, feeling irritated or annoyed by your opponent, letting noises, car alarms, people talking, etc. affect you while playing, expecting to be perfect, focusing on the past or future. Of course, we will at times be in the distraction process. It's okay. We are not perfect. The key is the ability to refocus. If you find yourself in the distraction process, accept it. Simply notice. Then recommit your thoughts and actions back to the winning process. The more you refocus, the more you will find clarity and a better understanding of what to do in your tennis match. Chapter 2. Don't bother controlling your emotions. Amplify them. Human beings are not robots. We are not like Spock from Star Trek, who had the ability to suppress every emotion. Human beings are emotional creatures, so I am often dumbfounded by coaches and psychologists who advise that players should try to control their emotions. Other experts may suggest managing emotions, but that is a matter of semantics. Managing emotions is just another way of asking the player to control their emotions. I believe every time you try to control an emotion, it backfires. It ends up controlling you. Go ahead and experiment this for yourself. Try controlling your anger, frustration, or nervousness during a tough competitive tennis match. Make as much effort as possible to be calm in the face of break points and set points. Try not to be upset with yourself after missing 5 consecutive unforced errors. I doubt you will be effective in controlling your emotions. What is happening here is that your resistance to any emotion paradoxically makes that emotion stronger than before. In other words, your attempt and desire to control your emotion is the actual problem. After the previous chapter, you already know that Buddhism and Eastern philosophical thinking influence my vision of a mentally tough tennis player. Most Buddhist texts would recommend to accept emotions as they are and let go of any resistance to it. But as a competitive tennis player, is that enough? As I said, human beings are not robots. Can a tennis player play effectively by letting go of all emotions? Tennis is an emotional game. Human beings are emotional. Emotions can fluctuate and dissipate, but they can never be turned on and off like a switch. So don't bother controlling your emotions. Instead, amplify them. For example, when you voluntarily intensify your own nervousness, you not only accept being nervous, you embrace it. You welcome it. Nervousness becomes your ally and not your enemy in a tennis match. By amplifying your nervousness, you channel your nervousness into something positive. Arjuna Ardagh, author of Let Yourself Go, details a method of removing resistance to emotions called radical releasing. He explains, "The aim is simply to remove the resistance so it can move through. We remove the resistance through amplification. When you amplify and amplify and amplify something to the absolute maximum, you cannot resist it at the same time. It is impossible. There is always some mixture of expression and resistance. When you fully amplify, you cannot also resist. When you take any frequency to the maximum and then drop it back into infinite consciousness, that wave dissipates back into the ocean and it is gone." Ardagh, 2006. So how do you amplify emotions successfully and safely? First, you have to be fully prepared going into any tennis match that it may be extremely emotional. It would be foolish to expect that you will beat every opponent 6-0, 6-0 and not go through any adversity. Anytime before an important tennis match, give yourself at least 5 minutes to meditate and feel all the emotions that you may feel during that match. Meditate on those emotions, accept them, and learn to amplify them in that meditative state. During the actual match, learn to amplify your emotions in between points and changeovers. For example, if you get angry after committing an unforced error, become even more angry before the start of the next point and channel that anger into the effort and strategy of winning the next point. You absolutely cannot resist that anger. You also cannot let the anger use you. For example, throwing your racket at the fence, shouting expletives, or displaying any destructive behavior shows that emotions are still controlling you. You need to rise above that anger and use it to win the match. What about positive emotions, such as happiness or excitement? As long as you are not resistant to these emotions, you are on the right path. Sometimes when we make a great shot, we do not allow ourselves to emote positively and simply move on to the next point. Learn to celebrate great shots during the match. Do a fist pump, yell a "come on" or a "let's go." Perhaps you are not an expressive person, but you must give yourself permission to be happy and rejoice. Chapter 3. Respect the game of tennis. To be a mentally tough tennis player, you absolutely need to have respect for the game of tennis itself. Without it, you become blind to how much this game can offer you. Respect is more than just liking or enjoying something. It goes much further. Respect shows admiration, awareness, and a high regard towards someone or something. But before you start respecting the game of tennis as a whole, you need to start respecting the components that make up tennis. Respect property. You see it all the time. A tennis player misses an easy shot and immediately throws his or her tennis racket to the ground. After such immeasurable disappointment, tennis players are often faced with a tempting act to throw their racket and smash it into fragmented bits. In reading the previous chapter, you know throwing your racket does not solve the problem. It exacerbates it, and the act shows how emotion has taken control of you. It also shows that you don't have much respect for the racket itself. Respecting property may be the most difficult thing to do because property is lifeless. It's just a thing. In tennis, your most important property is your tennis racket. So why respect your tennis racket? I submit to you, your tennis racket is life. It is an extension of your hand. Would you cut your hand off and trash it? Your racket was also made and designed by other human beings. Countless hours have been spent by working people to produce a highly crafted tennis racket just for you. Furthermore, think of how tennis rackets evolved. At first, they were simply made out of laminated wood, and now they are composed of highly complex materials designed to give you the most power and control possible. Without respect given to property, you likely will not appreciate the marvel that is the modern tennis racket. Respect yourself and your opponents. Everyone is different. Each person has their own perspective and unique abilities as a tennis player. Many players may have the same style of play, but no two people are completely identical. Everyone has something to offer. Your awareness of your own unique abilities and your opponent's unique abilities allows you to respect yourself and others. Be careful not to misinterpret respect. When you respect yourself, it does not mean that you should feel superior to others. Furthermore, when you respect your opponents, it does not mean to fear them nor to look at your own tennis abilities as inferior. When you respect yourself, you understand that you have unique strengths as well as unique weaknesses. If we let our mind think that we are superior to our opponents, we may become stubborn in how we play. You may lose sight of the fact that although your forehand is a strength, your forehand may be committing more unforced errors than usual that particular day. Similarly, if we start to fear our opponents, we may lose sight of the fact that our style of play may simply need an adjustment in order to be competitive. We could also be unaware that our opponent may have glaring weaknesses. Respect simply puts tennis in proper perspective and allows you to focus on what should matter, how to win. Losing respect for yourself and your opponent will make you blind. Respect the game. I only started respecting the game of tennis in the summer of 1998. That was the time when my father suffered a heart attack. It was a scary moment. I was still living with my parents at the time, and around 5 a.m. on a quiet weekday morning, my mother busted my bedroom door screaming. My dad could not breathe. I remember doing CPR in a panic state and called 911. After 1 minute, which seemed like an eternity, my father woke up. Paramedics came within a few minutes, and amazingly my father was okay for the time being. After a few tests at the hospital, we learned that he needed to go through quintuple bypass surgery. My father was an avid tennis player. I remember the cardiologist said to me that without tennis, my father may not have made it. It was then and there that I had a new respect for tennis. I firmly believe tennis saved my father's life. To anyone that doesn't play tennis, it's quite understandable how tennis can simply be viewed as a simplistic game with players running around with rackets trying to hit a fuzzy yellow ball over the net. Perhaps you are a tennis player and you simply view it as an escape. It's just something to take your mind off of work. Or maybe it's just one of the many sports you play along with basketball, golf, or soccer. That's fine. I see tennis as a game of in-depth problem solving. It's an ongoing, real-time, action-filled strategy chess match. I see tennis as a vehicle to promote important values such as persistence, never giving up, how to work hard, forgiveness, compassion, and respect. Tennis is a sport that will take any troubled teenager off the streets. It's a sport that will promote a healthy, active lifestyle. I see tennis as a lifesaver. Chapter 4. Forgive. During the ninth inning of Game 7 of the 2014 World Series, San Francisco Giants center fielder Gregor Blanco made a spectacular error that made every San Francisco Giant fan around the world gasp in sheer disbelief. With only one out left to capture a World Series championship title, Blanco committed a disastrous fielding mistake that may have tied the game and given the title to the Kansas City Royals. Then the next batter came up and Madison Bumgarner pitched a very cool and collected masterpiece that led to the final out. San Francisco Giants won the 2014 World Series. Of course, Madison Bumgarner's pitching prowess was self-evident here. What is not so evident and what should be recognized was Bumgarner's ability to forgive his teammates and pitch effectively at the most crucial part of the series. In the most pressure-packed situation of a game, an athlete must have a clear mind in order to perform. If Bumgarner had not forgiven and let resentment fester, he would have easily become distracted and the game could have slipped away then and there. Bumgarner shows us that the power of forgiveness can literally win you championships. What is forgiveness? The traditional definition of forgiveness means to stop feeling angry or resentful toward the person who has wronged you. However, in sports, this traditional definition does not particularly apply. Teammates don't exactly wrong you, but they do commit mistakes and they do have flaws. What we need to do is expand the definition of forgiveness to include mistakes, flaws, and the imperfections of simply being human. Even though athletes always strive for perfection, the truth is that perfection can never be attained. Your teammates will screw up. You will screw up. The athlete must learn to forgive consistently. Forgiveness is not a one-time event. Forgiveness is a practice. Without forgiveness, fear will slowly fester and mitigate any chance for an athlete to reach his or her true potential. It's especially important for tennis players to learn to forgive. Errors happen all the time in tennis, and if you don't forgive yourself, you will not have the ability to focus on the next shot. In doubles, it's vital to continually forgive your teammate. If you start being resentful towards your teammate, errors will crop up even more, and you will lose the ability to problem solve, and your teammate may lose interest in playing altogether. Forgiveness will give you the room to create energy, excitement, and freedom regardless of what is happening on the court. Learn to forgive. The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. Mahatma Gandhi. Chapter 5. Know the small picture versus the big picture. You may have seen tennis players who have great ground strokes and superb overall tennis form, but can't seem to get a rally going in an actual match. Or you've played against people who have terrible ground strokes but are still able to beat you and win many matches at their level. What's going on here? In tennis, there's what I call the small picture versus the big picture. Small picture deals with the mechanics, techniques of playing tennis. This includes grips, proper backswing, contact point, footwork, etc. Tennis is a very technical game, and being aware of the small picture will improve tennis technique. Big picture deals with shot selection, strategy, and the mental state of the player. A person who is aware of the big picture will always ask the right questions. For example, what is my opponent's favorite shot? Where is the wind blowing to? What is the score? Is my opponent getting tired? Why do I play tennis? Awareness of the big picture allows you to make better decisions regarding all aspects of playing tennis. When you understand the small picture versus the big picture, you get a better sense of what you need to improve. Perhaps you may need to improve your backhand technique, or maybe your shot selection was poor during a competitive match and simply needed to go cross-court more instead of risking down-the-line shots. It helps to know that just because you have massively powerful ground strokes with perfect tennis form, it doesn't mean you'll win the match. Moreover, having the perfect strategy for a tennis match doesn't mean you'll win the match either if you can't execute a forehand effectively. To be a complete player, you need to understand both the small picture and the big picture. Chapter 6. Have a sense of urgency, not a sense of impatience. I worked with a coach whose coaching style resembled a drill sergeant. I'm sure you've seen drill sergeants portrayed in movies. They are obviously loud and literally in your face with shouting their orders and demands. Subordinates will always cower to do anything that is ordered by the drill sergeant. Now, I'm not completely opposed to this type of coaching. I've seen students be extremely lackadaisical on the court, and a coach needs to be forceful if necessary to implement discipline or simply have the student wake up. However, drill sergeant type of coaching has its limits and could prove detrimental in the long run. At some point, a student under such constant stress by a demanding coach will gather a sense of impatience and will play tennis matches in an extremely pressurized state. Yes, tennis is a sport of high-intense action, and you must be alert. But you must also be calm and thoughtful if you want to be successful. Having a sense of impatience means that your mind is stuck in the past. For instance, if you are in an endless rally and start to feel impatient, what your mind is telling you is that this rally should have been over 5 seconds ago. Once you start feeling this way, you'll likely make an overly aggressive shot and lose the point. A better approach is to have a sense of urgency. This puts you back in the present and allows you to take necessary and calculated action now. Urgency makes the past irrelevant and frees your mind to do what is needed. I remember a tennis match where I was extremely frustrated, mostly because I felt I was playing against a carbon copy of myself, only better. He was extremely consistent and moved faster than me. I became desperately impatient and started missing easy balls. I refocused, and instead of being impatient, I decided to have more of a sense of urgency. I knew that I couldn't beat him with consistency, but I also knew that I had to take more calculated risks and become more offensive without being impatient. With a newly founded sense of urgency, I proceeded to take the ball much earlier, play more net, and execute more down-the-line shots instead of cross-court to surprise my opponent. It worked. Without a sense of urgency, I would have become impatient and quickly lost. Chapter 7. Seek motivation outside of your own ego. Most of us who compete in any tennis tournament or league want to win for ourselves. A certain amount of selfishness or ego must be present in each of us in order to win at any competitive level. So, could ego ever get in the way of winning? I think it does, and it may happen to you after you win a tournament or championship level match. Yes, success can be a problem. Legendary football coach Bill Walsh called it the success disease. Walsh wrote in his book, The Score Takes Care of Itself, when you reach a large goal or finally get to the top, the distractions and new assumptions can be dizzying. Success disease makes people begin to forego to different degrees the effort, focus, discipline, teaching, teamwork, learning, and the attention to detail that brought the mastery and its progeny, success. The hunger is diminished, even removed by some people. Walsh, Jameson, and Walsh. See 2010, page 142. Success can deprive people of any motivation to succeed again if the person is only playing for himself. When a goal is finally accomplished, how can a person motivate to achieve the same goal? The solution is simple and has to come from an unselfish desire to help someone else other than yourself. You must seek motivation outside of your own ego. So, here are some ideas. Instead of playing tennis to increase your trophy count, try playing for your family. Play for your husband or wife. Play for your school. Play for your country. Play for keeping yourself and your friends in shape. Play for the simple fun of tennis itself. Whatever the case may be, motivating yourself for only the sake of winning is not enough. As a tennis player, you will soon be asking yourself, what is the point of chasing all these tennis balls around? Why must I continue to suffer and get tired? You will play better and enjoy tennis longer when you seek a more altruistic form of motivation. About the author. Adrian Gonzalez was a ranked USTA NorCal junior from 1990 to 1996. He played number 1 varsity singles for St. Ignatius College Preparatory in San Francisco, California, and helped lead St. Ignatius to 2 WCAL team championships in 1994 and 1996. He has a BA in Communication Studies at San Francisco State University and a MS in Leadership Studies from Northeastern University. Adrian has served as boys' head tennis coach, JV at St. Ignatius, and girls' assistant varsity tennis coach at Mercy Burlingame. He formerly worked as a tennis professional for High Performance Institute in San Mateo, California. Currently, Adrian is head women's tennis coach and kinesiology adjunct professor at Mission College, Santa Clara, California. References: RDog A 2006, Let Yourself Go, The Freedom and Power of Life Beyond Belief, retrieved from audible.com. Galloway W.T. 2008, The Inner Game of Tennis, The Classic Guide to the Mental Side of Peak Performance, New York Random House. Gowans C.W. 2007, Philosophy of the Buddha, New York, New York, Routledge. Walsh B., Jameson S., and Walsh C., 2010, The Score Takes Care of Itself, My Philosophy of Leadership, New York Portfolio Penguin. Hey guys, so you've made it this far, and I just want to say thank you for listening to this audiobook or reading the book. I really appreciate that. I have my gratitude is beyond words. So this book is really a short read, right? It's not too long, but I think the material here is pretty dense. So, if you read it, this is the first time you've read this or listened to this audiobook, it's, you're not going to be a mentally tough tennis player right away, right? So you're going to have to practice this just like you practice your forehand, your backhands, your volleys. You got to practice being mentally tough too. So it's not going to come overnight or one or two matches, but it'll come for you if you keep practicing that. And if you remember the first chapter about the focus, we think of focusing as this steady thing, but actually it's not. It's not a one-time thing or a steady thing. I think, if you really focus, if you're good at focusing, you learn to refocus because when you focus on something, you naturally fall off. But what do you do after that? Do you go back to focusing again? So I think that's the key, just to refocus, and you will be on the right path. So in your tennis games, keep at it. Keep practicing all these ways to stay mentally tough. And if you have your own ways of staying mentally tough, I like to hear about them too. So please email me. I'm open to all these ideas. And thank you again for listening to this audiobook. And if you're a student of mine, I'll see you at the court soon. Thank you.